there would probably be forms of blasphemous speech that I would authorize or want the state to be more vigilant in enforcing, which, just be clear, we did in this country until the early 20th century. Like blasphemy laws on the books in force up into the 20th century. Sometimes people think blasphemy is simply a crime against God. It's not just a crime against God. It's also a crime against society. Blasphemy is a public thing. It's not what you think in your head. It's what you do out in public. And therefore, the state has a vested interest in preventing wide-scale social harm. So this is deeply American. It's not crazy.
Blasphemy laws absolutely did exist in early America. Importantly, these laws overwhelmingly protected Christianity. Take New York. In People versus Ruggles in 1811, John Ruggles was prosecuted for publicly making deeply insulting statements about Jesus and Mary. New York's highest court upheld his conviction, and Chief Justice James Kent explained, quote, "Christianity is not unknown to our law," unquote. But that's really revealing. So the argument there wasn't people shouldn't say offensive things. The argument was that Christianity was connected to the moral order of society itself. So Pennsylvania's Supreme Court made the idea even more explicit in Updegraff versus Commonwealth in 1824. Christianity, general Christianity, is and always has been a part of the common law of Pennsylvania. So yes, blasphemy laws are absolutely part of American history. But what does that really demonstrate? I think it demonstrates that Christianity once occupied a privileged position within American law and culture. I think that's very different than saying the United States Constitution established America as a Christian nation. In fact, this history exposes something much more interesting. Early Christians could proclaim religious liberty while simultaneously maintaining a hierarchy of religions. You might be legally permitted to be Jewish. You might be legally permitted to reject Christianity, but Christianity could still receive protections that your beliefs did not. And that's not religious neutrality, that's religious hierarchy. Now, eventually, our constitutional understandings changed. As the First Amendment became applicable against state governments through the 14th Amendment, the Supreme Court increasingly rejected the idea that government could privilege Christianity or any other religion in this way. By 1952, in Joseph Bernstein, Inc. versus Wilson, the Supreme Court struck down New York's ability to censor films because they were considered sacrilegious. Think about that transformation. In 1811, New York could punish someone for publicly attacking Christianity because Christianity was considered foundational to the social order. By 1952, the Supreme Court was saying government couldn't suppress speech simply because religious people considered it sacrilegious. Right? Is that right? Yeah. And I think that's the history we actually need to wrestle with here. Because saying, we used to have Christian blasphemy laws, therefore they're American, it doesn't answer the important question. Slavery was American. Religious tests were American. Women being denied political equality was American. Jim Crow was American. Something being historically American tells us nothing about whether it was just or whether we should resurrect it. The more important question here is, what happens to religious freedom when the government gets to decide whose God is protected from criticism? Because the moment the government starts protecting Christianity from blasphemy, somebody has to define Christianity. Somebody has to define blasphemy. And somebody has to decide which religions receive that protection. That's not religious liberty. That's not the way of Jesus either, by the way. That's government deciding which religious beliefs deserve power.